Welcome into SportsZone All Access here on KELOLAND Plus on this Thursday, September the 18th. We'll call it our college football preview show as we're going to talk the two FCS schools. We'll also talk about Augustana, Northern State, and USF, and a lot of games coming up this weekend. Well, one less than normal. SDSU's on a bye week. We'll talk about that in a second. But we start off first with a familiar opponent coming to South Dakota. That's because number 15 USD is going to host Drake. And for the Bulldogs, they might as well not even gone home. I know it was just over to Des Moines. It's not that far away, Ian. But they did make the trip back to Des Moines, and now they're going to come back to Vermilion after playing in Brookings last weekend and kind of playing the Jackrabbits maybe a little closer than many had expected.
They definitely played SDSU a lot closer than a lot of fans expected. It seemed like almost the exact same script as when they played 2 years ago. Drake goes down, scores on the opening drive, goes up 7-0. Last time SDSU hung 70 on them. This time it was a 16-point victory. SDSU felt like it was firmly in control most of the game, but Drake never felt out of it at the same time. And now you're playing a USD team that's looking to build that momentum and carry the win from last week into now building it into a back-to-back victories.
Yeah, and, the one thing is the surprise factor. LJ Phillips was a surprise last week, right? Charles Bear Jr. gets out for the season, and then here comes LJ Phillips rushing for 300 yards, and that was huge. It's actually the reason that they beat Northern Colorado. Without that performance, they wouldn't have done it. But now they got a really tough Drake team, and Coach Johansson knows that this Bulldogs team is someone they're not going to take lightly.
Has the ability to really choke you out in the run game and make it difficult on you to throw the football in a lot of too high structure. So excited for a week, excited for our players to improve one more week, and we've got to have our stuff together versus a good Drake team.
Pretty simple. Got to have your stuff together against a good Drake team, and that starts with the passing offense, Ian. Right there, I think coming into this year, you had Aiden Bauman coming back, you had Pierre Jr. They thought there'd be tremendous balance with this team. They are 32nd in rushing offense, not bad. A rushing offense that's trending the right way. They're 109th in passing offense. That is bottom 10 in the FCS. Clearly something that they got to find a lot more rhythm in with a guy returning of Aiden Bauman's stature.
Third year as the starting quarterback, and each year we've seen him take steps. We saw him take a lot of steps from year 1 to year 2 last year, and the expectation was that, okay, now what he did last year, now we build on that into year 3, and the ceiling was really high for this passing offense, and it's still very early in the season, so I don't want Yotes fans to feel that upset about it, but you do realize you're already 3 games in, and the passing game has been almost non-existent, it felt like. As you said, bailed out with the run game last game,
right?
But now everyone knows what Phillips is going to do, and you heard Coach talk about it there, in that this Drake team can both stop the run and then also make it very hard to pass. For a passing offense that's looking to get going, that's going to be very difficult.
It is, and they got a tough schedule coming up, right? They still got the Missouri Valley to play. SDSU last week rushed for 211 and passed for 225, so a great balance against this Drake team. We'll see. USD's got to start figuring that out at some point. It's been their Achilles heel so far. Let's turn and let's talk about the SDSU Jackrabbits. And this is a little bit easier conversation because we're not going to be talking about the opponent they play this week. We're going to be more talking about just the Jackrabbits. And that's what they're focusing on, Ian. And we've known this since Stig was the head coach, right? Like they don't call it a bye week. They call it an improvement week. That's the way they're approaching this. And that's building off of what they were able to do last Saturday, where some people say they didn't win as well as they would have liked, but Coach Jackson liked the depth that they saw in that game.
Yeah, they had a lot of depth, and he talked about it after the game and said, look at all the players that we were able to get in and play big moments and have big opportunities there, and that depth is going to prove valuable once you get into conference play in a very tough Missouri Valley football conference.
we got a ton of players in the game tonight that grew and made some plays, and a couple freshman running backs scoring touchdowns, Alex Bullock getting a touchdown, Jack Smith making a big play in a critical third down. Those are the things that I see. Is I think we actually did grow in terms of our depth, which was a goal for this week, was to develop some depth and get them in the game and trust them.
Yeah, get them in the game and trust them. That's, you can't ask for anything better in this situation. So to come away with a 16-point win and be able to build your depth with only one non-conference game to go, it's got to be a positive for SDSU. And that's the Dan Jackson was asked, that question what was asked was, you guys only won by 16. Maybe it didn't look like the best performance out there. And that was him saying, you're right, maybe it wasn't the best performance, but we got out of it what we needed. And now they're going to build off of the best game that they've had depth-wise all season with an improvement week as well.
Well, you mentioned that they just have the one more non-conference game. Mm-hmm. Non-conference is all about figuring out those rotations and what players you can rely on in what situations. That's exactly what they did in this Drake game. SDSU could have won by 40, but that's not going to help them in the long run.
Correct.
Knowing that they have this linebacker that they can put in on a third down situation, or this running back that they could turn to change the pace on offense, that is what's going to help them compete in the Missouri Valley, not whether they beat Drake by 2 scores or 5 scores.
Right. And two, the Missouri, they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do. SDSU, because this is there are familiar faces in this coaching staff, but it's the first time they've ever been assembled. So they're still trying to figure out, what are we going to do? You work all off season and in camp, right? But it's never the same as those game reps. And so they're still trying to figure out what is our best lineup will look like, what our best plays will look like. And it has showed the last 3 games to the tune of 3 wins and including a huge win at Montana State. So now they get Mercyhurst next week. We'll preview that game. Then they go to Youngstown State. They get eased into the Missouri Valley a little bit. And then it gets real busy with North Dakota State, USD, separated by just 3 weeks. So, yeah, lot more to talk about on SDSU. Not as much to talk about this week because it's their bye week. So they get to enjoy the next few days off. Well, we're going to talk Division II football, Augustana, USF, Northern State previews when we come back to SportsZone All Access. Welcome back, SportsZone All Access here on this Thursday, September the 18th. We talked USD and SDSU. Now let's dive into Division II and jump right into the Augustana Vikings, who preseason they were ranked and they found a way to win 3 games. It maybe hasn't been the prettiest wins. We all know what they did last week to squeak out that win at UMary. But they're now up to number 9 in the country, Ian. People are impressed by this Augustana team. Last week, and I don't even know what to take away from last week's game, they found a way to gut out a win after playing a really, honestly, bad first half of football.
So you can look at it both ways. You can look at it and say, well, they're not blowing people out, so maybe they're not as good as we think they are. But I look at it as the flip side, and they're doing what they need to do to win in the critical moments, scoring those 2 late touchdowns to win by 1 point. Not the prettiest game for if you're a Viking fan, but a win is a win, whether you win by 30 or you win by 1 point.
See, and we've seen the 2 ends of it, too, where they had that crazy game against Missouri Western in the opener, win 30-26, turn around the next week, blow the brakes off of Jamestown, then have that crazy game against UMary, and now they're going to play a really struggling Bemidji State team. So we could see this trend continue of close game followed by a blowout, with Bemidji State being just drastically down this year. But like you said, Ian, they're finding a way to win football games, and that's key right now for them, scoring 29 points per game. That is 4th best in the NSIC. Their defense, 17 points a game, which is 3rd best in the NSIC. So they like the balance that they've got going on right now, and they're 3-0, right? Can't complain about that too much. as you talk about the Augustana Vikings. Well, let's turn the page. Let's talk about the USF Cougars. They got a big game going on. USF just entered the rankings this week at number 25. That's a lot of excitement. It's the first time they've been ranked since 2022. To counter that, congrats, you're ranked. Here comes number 16 Minnesota Duluth, who's pretty darn good, right? And Minnesota Duluth has had a really good season. They have the number 1 defense in the NSIC at 9 points per game. And to counter that, USF, they're scoring some points. 41 points per game for USF. That's second best. We're going to see a clash of offense versus defense here.
Well, you love to see best on best. That's what makes some of the best matchups. And will this USF offense be able to score on that defense that is so tough to score against? Think about that. We're several weeks into the season, and they're averaging giving up less than 10 points per game. That's a touchdown and a field goal. That's not a lot, and Duluth is giving up less than that per game. So it'll be a big challenge and test for this Cougar offense to see, can they put up points against the best of them.
Well, and then to counter that, Duluth scoring 37 points per game. So their offense is rolling along well as also, and then for USF, 24 points a game per defense. So, on paper, you like what Minnesota Duluth is doing. I'll be intrigued. Their 3 games so far, Winona State, they beat by 28. Winona State's down a little bit this year. Concordia St. Paul is also down this year, and they beat them 61-7. So that number will skew your numbers a little bit. But they just went and beat Minnesota State Mankato, right? One of the best teams in the country, 17-14. So, Minnesota Duluth's got a resume, right? They're a pretty good football team, and I'll be intrigued to see this ranked matchup on Saturday at 1. Now let's turn and talk about Northern State now and the Wolves. Coming off a nice little win last week where Wayne State came up to Aberdeen, and they controlled that game. They didn't give up a touchdown until the fourth quarter, kind of dominated it wire to wire. And I like what I've seen from Northern State so far. I mean, they lost a little bit in the second half against USF, but otherwise they've played 6 quarters of really good football so far through 2 games and find themselves at 1-1 here in the early part of the season.
Well, you think about what Northern State looked like in the first half of last season. They really struggled out of the gate, dropping their first 5 games. Now to be 1-1 and play a really good half, and even first 3 quarters, I'd say, in that USF game. That fourth quarter got away from them. The Cougars were able to pull away there in the fourth, but they were right there with them last year. That game was decided in the first quarter. The Cougars ran away with it, and this is a better USF team this year. So that the fact that Northern State hung so tough with them, a really impressive one, especially on the road. Then they go back home, pick up that really big win, a game where they might not have had the offensive production that they were looking for, but the defense was what kept them in and ultimately powered them to the win.
Well, in Concordia St. Paul, 1-1 so far this year. They are allowing 40 points per game, which is worst in the NSIC, and scoring 13. So they have a minus 27 scoring margin, where Northern State comes in scoring 27, giving up 24. Not great, but then again, you got to remember one of their games was against USF. So, you like the matchup if you're USF, certainly, if you're Northern State, for their Gypsy Days game, their homecoming game. So that's pretty exciting. Here's some other games going on. Here's an interesting one. Remember, Dakota State's in that new conference. They got to go to Arizona for an 8 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. That might be a little warm for what these South Dakota boys are used to. Dakota Wesleyan will get a tough one hosting Northwestern. Northwestern, by the way, coming off that loss to Mount Marty, so they got a bounce-back week coming. And Mount Marty will play at 6 o'clock on Saturday, looking to continue success that they had, obviously, with that win. So 3 good NAIA games there. Well, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to talk with a South Dakota Tennis Hall of Famer who won a pretty big award. Kelsey Dennehy has that story when we come back to SportsZone All Access. Welcome back, SportsZone All Access, and We had a really cool story that Kelsey Dennehy just did. It aired in Wednesday night's news about Dr. Jessie Daw, who, if you're not in the tennis community, you may not know her name. If you're in the tennis community, you know exactly who she is. And she is someone who has been advocating for equality in sports and has been doing it for a long time. She's a tremendous tennis player, and she recently got honored with an award at the U.S. Open, which, if it's at the U.S. Open, means there's a pretty big deal. It was during the semifinals of the U.S. Open, too. So pretty cool story, and here's what she had to say when Kelsey Dennehy caught up with her.
Jessie Daw has been a part of the fight for equality in sports since the day she picked up a tennis racket.
I don't know if I ever really said, I'm going to fight for equality, I think it was just a sort of ingrained in everything that I did.
Daw was the first nationally ranked female to play tennis at the University of Illinois. She coached for several years after before becoming the chair of the kinesiology and sport management departments at USD. A South Dakota Tennis Hall of Famer, Daw was honored to be named one of the recipients of this year's award.
It was humbling. It was maybe a little bit imposter syndrome. Like, do I really deserve this? It was just a really, and a little bit proud too. This is really a unique experience and a great opportunity to have.
Said it so casually. She's like, "Oh, I'm getting honored with a medal between the semifinals games at the U.S. Open." It's like, wow.
Dr. Daw stood among past honorees like Venus Williams, Shonda Rhimes, and Ava DuVernay. The day-long event offered honorees the chance to connect with each other and the celebrity winners.
When the day actually came, it was a day of just being treated like a celebrity or a superstar or something.
Still, it was the event's message of inclusivity that resonated most.
They addressed it plain and clear, and then, that thought process of, really, if you're against this, what are you for?
Dr. Daw brings that message back to Vermillion to continue what is her already lasting impact on her students and athletes.
She's such a light, she really knows how to take charge, but she's not aggressive with it. She's a natural born leader.
I would want them to say that they learned something that made them better in some way. And not just on the court.
In Vermillion, Kelsey Dennehy, KELOLAND Sports.
Well, good stuff there. And, you hear some of the names that she's up there with, and you see it being at the U.S. Open, and you realize this was a big deal and a pretty cool honor for Dr. Daw.
Certainly. You heard the names that she was able to mingle with, and you saw the pictures with Billie Jean King there. That's tennis royalty right there.
Yeah, it is.
Someone from Vermillion was rubbing shoulders with. That's pretty cool, and certainly a well-deserved honor as well.
Yeah, the award is the Champions of Equality Award, and it's given to 16 winners each year for the last 3 years. It's actually the Billie Jean King Champions of Equality Award. So it's an award that is literally named after tennis legend Billie Jean King. So you can't say that wasn't pretty cool to win an award that is named after her and has been won by Venus Williams. And yeah, it's pretty cool, and certainly a congratulations to Dr. Jessie Daw on the award. Well, we're going to talk NFL football with our KELOLAND Pro Football Pick'ems. Yeah, we'll talk about that, and we'll dive into what you can expect tonight on KELOLAND Sports when we come back to SportsZone All Access. Welcome back, SportsZone All Access here on this Thursday the 18th. NFL starts again tonight, week 3. Dolphins, Bills. There was a running joke on Twitter yesterday that there was no Thursday night football game this week, to the point where I know people that actually believed that wasn't a thing, and I went, no, there's a game. People are just saying that because the Dolphins are that bad.
And the Bills are that good.
And the Bills are that good, right? So with that being said, don't forget, get into the Kelo Sports Pro Football Pick'em, right? You can find it on our website. Go win this football. Not this one specifically. I'm still trying to claim that this one's going to stick with us in the sports department.
Well, it should go to whoever wins the Kelo Sports.
That's fair enough, unless it's not me. I like that football. I want to keep that. It's one of those mini footballs, but it's actually got football grip on it. So it's not one of the cheap plastic ones. It's just one step above that. I don't know. Let's take a look at the Kelo Sports Pick'em. So we don't pick all the games we used to. That just takes too long. And honestly, there's some games that we just don't care about. And so here's some of the local matchups and big games. Last week, Ian was the winner by 1 game. So it's still anybody's contest. 3-2 for Ian, 2-3 for Kelsey and I. All of us, and we're not picking tonight's game, Packers, all of us going with the Packers. I think that one we'll just leave right there. Self-explanatory into that one. Bengals, Vikings, a little bit of split here, Ian. I'm going with the Bengals. I think I like what I saw with Jake Browning in the fourth quarter last week. Not to mention, this is a guy that's been in the system for a couple of years. Actually was on the Vikings roster a few years ago. He's been in this system for a few years, and it's not like he doesn't have any shortage of talent around him. So, and we saw that last week, but you're going with the Vikings. First of all, I guarantee when CBS made this one of their big games of the week, they were so excited to see McCarthy versus Burrow. And now they get Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning. But you're going with the Vikings.
I think that the Vikings are going to rebound off of last Sunday night where they looked really bad. Didn't score a touchdown in that game.
Right.
And I think that this is kind of maybe a start to get right game. They see an opportunity with no Burrow on the other side, and they say, hey, you know what? Maybe the Bengals are gettable, and I think that confidence can lead them to a victory.
Yeah, it'll be a close game. Not in the way that people had thought it was going to be, but it'll be a close game. All of us going with the Chargers. I think that's the same reason we're all going with the Packers, because the Chargers have looked really good through 2 weeks. All of us going with the Chiefs. Is this last week we all went with the Chiefs, all got it wrong, but it was the Mahomes won't go 0-2. Now is it the same thing, but Mahomes won't go 0-3?
Okay, they're playing the New York Giants.
Well, I'm just saying.
The
Giants almost beat the Cowboys last week.
Yeah, and the Giants gave up 40 points to the Cowboys.
They very much did. Russ cooked. Then we got a really good game on Monday night, Lions-Ravens. I'm going with the Ravens. They're at home. I like, obviously, them. You can go either way on this one. Ian's going with the Lions.
Toughest game of the week for me to pick.
It's a great game. And it's the only reason we threw it on there is because it's a really good game. Quickly before we go, what to expect tonight on KELOLAND Sports. USD is going to host Drake in football. We're going to hear from the Coyotes. USD volleyball playing Villanova. That's kind of a fun shakeup. We'll have highlights of that game. And then a big one. Kane County Cougars in town versus Sioux Falls. A huge game 3 tonight. Ian, the winner goes up in the series. This is a key game. You'll get a chance to be out there at this championship series.
Always important when it's a game 3 series tied at 1. And Canaries looking to get one step closer to winning a championship.
Big time game. We'll have all of that coming up tonight on KELOLAND Sports. But for now, that's our time. Thanks for watching SportsZone All Access. We'll see you back here on Friday.